So in this video, I'm going to show you how to fit a 4-post car lift in your low ceiling garage. And most importantly, first, we're going to show you how to verify that it will actually fit at all. While you can fit a lift in a lot lower ceiling height than most of the lift manufacturers or garage door shops will tell you, you still can't fit one in every single garage. So let's go. First thing you want to measure is to make sure that your garage is actually deep enough. As you can see, the ramps for these lifts are pretty long. In the case of my garage, this additional bay, which is where I want to put the lift, is actually less deep than the primary bay. Now, that's a pretty common thing. Unfortunately, I really wish it wasn't the case because I would love to have that extra like 18 inches, but I don't. You can see this will fit in my garage lengthwise, even with this set of shelves at the back of it. It's a mess right now because we're moving stuff. So that's the first measurement you want to take, is your bay. Most manufacturers are really good about posting specs on their lifts. They post not only the height and width, they post the distance between the columns, the distance to the outside of the columns, and the widest point, including the pump usually. So that's usually enough for you to go on. The other thing that you want to take into consideration is figure out how much room you're going to have behind the lift and in front of it to the door. One thing to consider is ramps do go on the front of this lift when you're pulling into it. So if you're gonna put it really close to the door, you're gonna have to consider that you might have to open that door in order to install the ramps and drive the car on it. Then you can close the door and lift it up. Additional consideration is if you wanna have shelves behind it like me, or you wanna have ample walking room behind the lift, you gotta make sure it's deep enough for that. Second piece you wanna measure is the width of the bay that you wanna put the lift in. In almost every case, the lift is going to be narrower than your door. So in my case, I have a 9-foot wide door, and this direct lift 8S comes out to be about 101 inches on the outside to outside of the uprights, or about 8.5 feet. You also want to look at how much space you have between your door and the wall. In my case, I don't have a lot, but because the lift sits inside, I'm completely fine on that. Something else to consider is the pump location does stick out farther than that 101. The pump mounts to the far side, which is towards the wall, and it will be in this back corner. All right, so now on to the piece that actually gets most residential people in garages, ceiling height. I've got 111 inches, which is about 9'4" on my ceilings here. Now my garage floor also slopes a little bit, so it's actually a little bit less than that in the back as well. On the ProPark 8000 standard, DirectLift quotes the columns as being 81.5 inches tall, so not even quite 7 feet. So 9-foot ceilings there are no problem for the actual physical lift height itself. Now in my case, I actually have an extra tall model, so mine come in at just a hair under 96 or 8 feet. So I've only got an additional foot and a few inches of ceiling height above what the columns actually sit at. So once you've determined that the lift will physically fit length, width-wise with your door and your specs to the wall, and most importantly to your ceiling height, the next thing to consider is what kind of car do you want to put on this thing. So most lift manufacturers, and if you call any garage door installers, they're going to tell you you probably need an 11-foot ceiling at bare minimum to put a lift in. Now that typically is the case if you want to be able to take the lift all the way to the top with a car on it. Especially depends on what car you have. If you want to put a truck or an SUV on top of that, you need additional ceiling height because of how tall that sits. However, if you just want to put something low on it, a sports car with a low roof height, especially if it's something really small like maybe a Miata, the sky's kind of the limit because you don't have to take that lift all the way to the top because the height that you have from that car to the ceiling is not going to be nearly as much. So to figure out if you could fit the 2 cars that you want on your lift, you need to measure the total height of the car that you want to put on top, the total height of the car that you would like to put underneath that car, and then you want to measure the thickness of the ramps, which in this case I rounded up to 6 inches just to be safe. You also do want to leave a little bit of leeway in there. You don't want to be just fractions of an inch on your roof line sliding under that lift. You also have to take into account the lifts operate on locks. These boxes in this plate are how the locks operate on mine. That's another reason you need to give yourself a little bit of leeway because you're going to have to take that car up just a hair higher than you actually want and bring it back down onto the lock set, which is going to leave a couple of inches minimum of ceiling height on the table. And be very, very careful whenever you are raising that car. In my case, the 2 cars that I want to get on this lift are both 3rd generation Toyota Supras. And both of my cars happen to be lowered on top of that, so that helps me out even more. So now we determined that the length, the width, and the actual height of the physical lift and the height of the 2 cars that you want to fit on that lift all work in your garage. There's one more thing that can really get you and hang you up here, and it's actually what got me. And that thing is your garage door tracks. In most cases, the lift is going to fit in between these garage door tracks. However, when you open that garage door, it's going to pass right through that plane. And that is something that I didn't think about when I was measuring for this lift. So I had accounted for the fact that the garage door would roll up over the hood of the top vehicle and towards the windshield, so I'd have to give a lot of care every time I opened that thing. I did not account for the fact that that garage door is going to be passing right above the columns of that lift, or in my case, right through them, unfortunately. If I'd gone with the 8S, it's only 81.5, so I would have been fine. However, I got a really good deal on this lift. It was about a year old, used, and less than half price of a new one. Also, I don't plan on this lift being in my garage forever. If things work out where we can eventually get back to the shop build, this lift will get moved out there where ceiling height will absolutely not be an issue. And having worked on low 4-post lifts in the past, I can tell you it's really nice when they go above your head height, so you're not always banking into it, because it will happen sooner or later. Additionally, if I want to put something tall like a truck underneath it, I have no issues with height. Now, you have a couple options here. They do sell high lift garage door tracks. Full new track set, brackets, everything to move your entire garage door track up. I chose to go with the cheaper route. I got a couple sticks of track that were actually takeouts that were free from my local garage door place, which was amazing of them. I cut those down to make 2 spacers that I could put in between the top part of the track and the vertical piece. This did take a little bit of work. I had to drill some holes, cut them to the right length, move everything up, and of course reset my entire garage door and the spring tension. I also had to build longer cables because now with that spring system up on the ceiling, but the door still down at the floor, the cables were about 1.5 feet too short. I was able to do this just getting some 1/8 cable from the hardware store and crimps, making my own. It wasn't all that hard, but it did take me probably the better part of a day to figure all this out because I had not done it before. So you can see we fast forward to I've got the lift completely assembled here in my garage, but you're probably wondering why it's sitting here rather than in the bay that I just adjusted the garage door for. And that is because of this little caveat in the way it gets constructed. So every lift has a locking mechanism in addition to the cables. So that's a manual locking system that is a safety feature, so you're not relying constantly on the tension and the hydraulics holding pressure. So in the case of the direct lifts, the way you disengage the locking system to lower the lift down is you have this lever over here that you have to pull. So this lever and rod has to slide in from the end of the lift. It slides into a hole right here on the end. It attaches to this much longer rod, which has to be slid into that end of the lift, and they meet in the middle and are tied together with a threaded coupler. The shorter one is just over 4 feet, which means you need 4 feet of clearance between any wall or objects from that side of the lift. This longer one is actually 11 feet. So this lift is already 16 feet long, so you really got to think about where you're going to assemble this that gives you the ability to put that in. So luckily on the direct lifts, the longer 11-foot rod goes towards the front of the lift. So in most cases, you're going to be able to open your garage door and put that in after the fact. The direct lifts do come with casters, and they do not require you to bolt them to the floor. So that gives you the ability to assemble the lift in one place, and then once it's assembled inside your garage, move it to its final location. So that gives you some flexibility and options. If I was to assemble the lift in the bay that I actually wanted in, I would have no way to pull it away from the wall, even with the casters, far enough to get these in. So I assembled the lift in this bay, and it's actually backwards from where it's going to go. So this end over here will be against the back wall, and that end will be facing the garage door in that other bay. So I'm going to have to pivot this end of the lift around, which will clear these garage door tracks, and then pivot this end back the other way. And so it's going to have to do a complete 180. It's going to allow all the posts to clear my garage door tracks, and when it's at a diagonal in my garage, I'll have more than enough room on either end to install these rods and screw them together. It's kind of a lot to explain, but a video is worth 1,000 words, so I will show you guys while we're doing that. The little nuances like this are why it's a really good idea to thumb through that installation manual on any lift you're considering beforehand, just to make sure there's nothing hidden like this that's going to get you in the end. It would be nothing worse than being super thorough, taking all your measurements on your garage and your lift, making sure it fits, buying that thing, getting it in, and realizing you have absolutely no way to install it. So as you guys can see behind me, I don't have both my supers in here, but I do have a little Datsun. So that's with the lift all the way up to the highest lock that I can get it on. You can see how little clearance there is to the ceiling on the top car and how little clearance I have to my Supra to the bottom of the rails, but it does fit in here. While my garage isn't huge, I effectively turned my 3-car garage into a somewhat comfortable 4-car if I wanted to slide something under that now. So, big improvement. We do have long-term plans of hopefully building a shop and a Boost Rodeo HQ, but for now, this at least gives me somewhere that I can work and get underneath a car without having to roll a creeper around in this tight garage. And it also lets me store one more in here. So again, I highly recommend the direct lifts. I am super happy with this purchase, even at the prices that they are new. I think they're a steal. Honestly, they hold 8,000 pounds. The fact that you don't have to bolt them to the floor, so you're not locked in on that, and you can move them around your garage or shop and reposition them is huge to me. 8,000 pounds is more than enough for pretty much anything I want to work on, including some of the older trucks I have. So it's going to be just perfect. Atlas Bend Pack, a lot of other companies make some really great ones too. You can do your own research, but I would give this one a thumbs up. I hope this helps someone out who was in a similar situation and really just needed more space out of their tight garage. And if you guys want more shop videos, you can check them out here.